No. Anyway, look, this guy is so generous to come in on Wednesdays. We adore him. He is a political historian. He's a great mind when it comes to so many things, not only politics, but government and what's happening in the Bay Area and beyond in California. How about it for the great John Rothman, everybody? You sexy fool. How are you, John?
Yes. Great. I have to wish Kim a very happy birthday. I know I'm a little late one day, but I want you to know that I would raise my glass of Tenuta grape juice.
Kim, how are you?
Yeah. Isn't that nice?
Thank you, John. Kim, I got your email yesterday. That was really sweet.
Oh, did he send you a birthday email?
He did.
Oh, yeah. That's very nice.
I know. Wow. He's a nice man.
Yeah. Well, they're saying at Tenuta, this is a good point. Also, when I go, Mark will just have someone kicked out to accommodate him if they don't have a reservation. Well, thank you. I'm glad that, yeah. Well, I am a big deal. So I'm just saying it's time
kind of a big deal.
When I belly up to the Tenuta bar, I want my spot.
Yeah.
Well, John, you couldn't find a more crowded field for president. On the GOP side, everybody's running. Tell me, if you will, I was mentioning in the last half hour why people run for president. It's not always to become president, as I'm sure you would agree. I wonder if you could decode a little bit of this field and tell us what you think may happen.
All right. First, let me point out I'm the biographer of Harold Stassen, who ran for president 10 times, never succeeded. But I once asked him, Governor, why are you running all the time? And he said, it keeps my name in the news. I get to say what I think and people interview me. So it was a question of attention getting. There's a second factor, I think, for a lot of these people. They have a political future. And if you can say you once ran for president and you tried and you may not have succeeded, but try again, who knows what might happen. The most interesting developments, of course, in this last week were the announcement of Chris Christie, who is running really against Donald Trump. And you have to understand, this is a man who, when he failed in 2016, endorsed Donald Trump, stuck with Donald Trump, almost was nominated for vice president. Trump seriously considered him a man who has been loyal to Trump, even received his COVID virus from Trump that nearly killed him. And so this is a man who feels betrayed. And when you are betrayed, and when you really feel you have been led down the garden path, you come back in full vigor. And that is exactly, Mark, what Chris Christie is doing.
You think it's personal for Chris Christie?
Oh, it is. And by the way, he's a very capable guy, but he's never going to be president. But he feels he can stop Donald Trump, and he feels that's a really important thing to do.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but just when you say he's never going to be president, why do you say that?
I think he does not have the base in the Republican Party to be nominated. It's just that simple. You cannot go, and we'll talk about Mike Pence in a minute, but if you go after the Trump voters, you have to be able to say nice things about Donald Trump. Chris Christie has nothing nice to say about Donald Trump. And if the Trump base is 30%, 40%, whatever it is, you just can't get the nomination that way. Mike Pence is in stark contrast. Mike Pence can point out that for 4 years he loyally served and worked with and for Donald Trump, that he has been a loyal vice president. He can now say, I have differences. And really, when you stop and think about it, in his announcement this morning, Mike Pence did not mention Donald Trump, but he mentioned Ronald Reagan twice. The reason that Donald Trump is no longer popular with Mike Pence is clear. But what Mike Pence is doing is he's taking a gamble, and it's a big gamble, that he can go to the base of the Republican Party and resurrect the Reagan coalition, the religious right, and the Midwestern roots from which he has come. One other quick point about Mike Pence. He is not just a conservative or a Republican. He is a Christian. And let me point out to you, his autobiography is titled, So Help Me God. For Mike Pence, who was born a Catholic but became an evangelical Christian, this sense of devotion to God is critical. So I think that we're going to see in Mike Pence, who's going all out in Iowa for one reason. It is the first one that matters, but it's evangelical voters. They are in Iowa. And He feels if he can do it anywhere, he can do it in Iowa. So tonight, just so everybody knows it. Don't call me, don't email me. Between the hours of 6 and 8, I'm going to be listening on CNN avidly to Mike Pence, as I did, by the way, to Nikki Haley, who makes a wonderful presentation. On foreign policy, she was absolutely rock solid. The problem is she, like Mike Pence, is to the right of Attila the Hun. They're outside of the range of American politics. So I think anyway. And so we'll have to see. But I'm looking forward to the Pence candidacy. And if you have not read his book, So Help Me God, it's worth reading.
Worth reading, why?
Because it's an insight into who he is, what he loves, what he cares about. And when
why I'm sorry, I don't mean to be argumentative at all, but why do I give an S about what Mike Pence? I think I have a pretty good feel just based on your description. He became an evangelical Christian. We know where he stands on various things. He tried to do these gay re-education camps, and when he was governor, he sapped Planned Parenthood of monies, and he redirected that money toward gay re-education. He's a despicable guy, as far as I'm concerned, in terms of his policies. I don't really care what informs those policies.
I don't disagree with you one whit. But why do I want to know? Because when you and I have a conversation about Mike Pence or about Nikki Haley or about Donald Trump or about the other 10 candidates who are running at this point, I want to be informed. And what I do, I hope, both for you and my podcast is up now, Around the Political World with John Rothman. I do it every morning. It's only 8 to 10 minutes. And I really try to give you my view on these things. It's because, Mark, that's how I stay informed.
No, of course. Very well put. All right. So let me ask you then, for the rest of the field, do you have any thoughts about the rest of the GOP field? Everyone in the chat is saying essentially, no one will make a blip. No, none of these people really have any chance to. And you're kind of saying the same thing, although you put Pence in another category, don't you? You really feel
do.
as though.
Let me also point out to people, there is going to be an indictment of Donald Trump. There may be 2 or even 3 indictments of Donald Trump. And it's a long way until we hit the Republican convention in 2024. Politics is shifting sands. You never know what's going to happen. I cannot help but reflect that it was on this day in 1968 that Robert Francis Kennedy died. Imagine if Kennedy had lived, how the course of history would have been different. So nothing in politics or in love is locked in completely. And as long as we understand that, love, war, and politics are imponderables. The other big question is Ukraine. And if you are noticing, the Ukrainians are launching their offensive. There is a division. I'll probably talk about it tomorrow morning, at least I hope to, on my own podcast. But I want you all to be aware there is a division in the Republican Party between the Senate and the House Republicans that is profound. And this is really an important issue because not since 1940, when the question of isolationism versus interventionism was in play, have we seen this kind of dynamic in the Republican Party. One other quick point, I was asked in an email, has there ever been a vice president who has challenged a president in this fashion? And the answer is yes. You go back to 1940, John Nance Garner, who challenged Franklin D. Roosevelt. And Garner, of course, lost, but he did what he thought was the right thing. Never attacking Franklin D. Roosevelt publicly, simply going after policies. I don't think Mike Pence will go after Donald Trump in a personal way. I think he's going to go after Donald Trump to try to, on issues, and I think Ukraine may be one of them.
Interesting. I'm looking at the chat, and by the way, you get a lot of love for your podcast in the chat. Here's RJ Dunn. John, love the podcast. Dearly wish it was longer. Listening to you makes me more well-rounded politically. Something we all need. Yeah. John
around
says,
the political world with John Rothman. That's the end of the commercial.
And we'll mention it again at the end. John Anderson, Pence is too Christian and too hated by MAGA. He's a loser. Those indictments are just helping Trump, says Lori. She
may not be wrong
on the martyr card.
His base, the roughly 35% of the Republican Party, and I'm splitting the difference between 40% and 30% of 35%, they really view this as a persecution, not a prosecution. And he is going to take a lot of comfort from the fact that the people who love him love him. Remember, Mark, the very famous statement, which you and I have talked about before. Donald Trump said, I could shoot a person in middle of Fifth Avenue, and my supporters would stick with me, and that's exactly correct. So remember, if you're running for the Republican nomination for president, you not only want to win the nomination, you want to win the election. In order to win the election, you have to get the Trump base in line. If you lose the Trump base, you can't win the nomination and you can't win the election. The prediction that is made now by some, and it's just a prediction which I'm not sure will come true, is that Trump will win the nomination and then lose the election. What that would do would be to perhaps clear the cloud of ill will in the Republican Party. But he is still a major force, and his supporters believe in him, period.
Yeah, I want to ask you about the general election in a moment, so I'll double back to that. But right now I want to follow up on what you just are saying and ask you, of all of the looming legal challenges, I'll put it politely, that Donald Trump has, we know about Georgia looming. We know about the J6 through would come on a federal level that is looming. We know about this document case, which is rumored to actually be indictable this week. So there are all these rumors that have been swirling for a while. And the J6 thing is what I'm talking about on the federal level. Of all of those, or the ones I just mentioned, and whatever ones you can conceive of as well, are any of them capable of carving up Trump? Or might it be death by 1,000 cuts? So many indictments, so troubled a candidate that he begins to bleed out? Or is it, as you say, always viewed as that persecution, not prosecution? I guess what I'm asking you is what carries the most weight of some of those things that I've mentioned legally and politically?
I think they all do, but January 6th is particularly critical. I remind everybody, read the January 6th report. There's a summary. It's fascinating. It's just a scathing indictment. But the second aspect is Georgia, where I'm convinced there will be an indictment, and where there's his own words against him. And of course, what you're talking about now, the document situation, is also critical, particularly if there was a cover-up. So when you ask me which one, I say all of the above. Will it matter to people like you and me who are critical of Donald Trump already? It will matter. It will matter greatly because we are really concerned. But I talked with a Trump supporter the other day who said all they're doing is trying to nail him. They don't care what it is, and they're just going to keep throwing things at him. And then the kicker comment was, and John, by the way, he's never been gotten on anything. Well, I mentioned the question of the sexual assault. Oh, that's dismissed. It isn't real. But my own sense is that he is going to be indicted, that it's going to be fascinating. And a lot of these Republicans are running on a silent bet. The bet is that Donald Trump will really be guilty of something and that will knock him out and that will open things up. And I think that's what they're counting on because
although the timetable on all that, John, as you know, even assuming it's very, very tight. And you can, and you've made this point before, you can win the presidency from prison. You can absolutely be guilty.
Let me remind everybody, Eugene V. Debs ran for the presidency in 1920 as the Socialist Party candidate for president, got almost 1 million votes while he was in jail, and then, just so everybody knows, was never pardoned. He was granted clemency by Warren G. Harding on Christmas Eve, 1921.
Mm-hmm. I am looking at all of the. By the way, where did you run into a MAGA supporter and get into a big thing? I love that. Oh, and John says, I talked to a MAGA supporter the other day. Was that at your MAGA meeting, John? Where did you see the MAGA supporter?
I have been, frankly, very busy meeting and greeting people here in San Francisco. I get a lot of comments, and of course, I can even go to the bank or the supermarket or wherever I go, and people come up to me and give me what for, which I appreciate immensely.
Do you know who I am?
Oh, yes.
I'm kind of a big deal.
I'm sorry. I forgot.
I was at the museum. I was at the DeYoung Museum yesterday, and a woman came up to me and said, I just love you, John. So, it just goes to show you.
Isn't that great? That's never a bad thing. All right. In our last few minutes, I do want to get to San Francisco. You mentioned San Francisco. The San Francisco, and I want to shout out to, how would you pronounce that name? I can't see very well. NNE. N the Jato? Anyway, thank you for the 50. And appreciate that. And big shout out.
Big shout out.
All right. Now let me continue with John. But thank you so much, John. I'll double back to that super sticker. That's really cool. You know, we're crowdfunded, John. So we got
I do, and I hope
for
everybody supports the Mark Thompson show. Unfortunately, he does not pay me what the Saudis are paying on the golfing circuit. In fact, may I say, Mark, it is a high honor and great personal privilege to work for nothing for you.
Oh, you're so sweet, John. That's very, very nice. Let me ask you about San Francisco. You mentioned San Francisco, and I was saying in the ramp up, look, we love the San Francisco area. We love San Francisco for all the jewels that are contained therein. But there's some problems. I think COVID didn't help, but smash and grabs, a perception of lawlessness, homelessness. We've talked about public defecation and urination. These are a lot of things that affect major cities. Let's be clear. It's not just San Francisco, exclusive to San Francisco. But what is now happening, in addition to those things I just mentioned, is you have huge commercial real estate owners who are scared of remaining in San Francisco. And you have those who are leasing big chunks of commercial real estate who are saying, we're going to skate from our lease. Kim had the story yesterday about the two hotel
and the Park Hotel, yes.
Thank you. So can you speak to this and what's happening in the city, please?
Look, you know, I'm seriously considering running for mayor. I've had a lot of people who've come to me to ask me to run. I have not made a decision. For those of you who have made the inquiry, I probably won't make a decision for a while. But in the meantime, I'm talking to people and having people talk to me. We have to save this city. There are some people who say it can't be saved. I was with some people yesterday and I said, you know, the problems are so serious. How do you really overcome them? If we don't try to tackle these problems, this city is going to really fail. I believe in San Francisco. Whether I run for political office or not, I intend to do everything I can to help preserve San Francisco. But everybody needs to know, with all the negativity, CNN ran a special, then they had a discussion last night on it. The San Francisco Chronicle every single day was something about the problems of San Francisco, certainly the problems that London Breed as mayor is having, the Board of Supervisors, which some people are just absolutely disgusted with. Look, I can only be positive, Mark. This is a great city. It has a lot of value to it. I don't think San Francisco is going to go down the tubes. I believe in the city. I believe in the people who live in the city. The leadership of the city, not just the mayor, but the Board of Supervisors, the business community, the religious community, everyone has to pull together to try to make a difference in this city. And I intend to do everything I can, one way or the other, to help preserve, protect, and yes, defend a city with such a great history and heritage. So all I can tell you is I don't have answers, but I have a lot of questions. I have a very specific set of objectives that I would have were I to run for mayor. And if I run, I'll let you know what they are.
I wonder what you would do administratively. I feel as though San Francisco is held hostage by an administrative poison almost. I don't think it's, yeah.
We have a weak mayor system. We've always had a weak mayor system. We have a Board of Supervisors divided up by districts. And I have to tell you, that's one of the greatest disasters that ever hit this city. There ought to be citywide elections again, because then you really have a sense of what San Francisco is doing. The same thing applies with the Board of Education, where we have now an elected Board of Education. I would rather go back to the days when the mayor appointed and then the city confirmed the nomination and in an election. And frankly, ranked choice voting is a disaster in San Francisco. So, I mean, there are a whole series of things that I would run on. And the one thing I can guarantee you is, whether I run or not, I intend to make my view of ways of improving San Francisco come to life. I want to commend Mayor Breed on the sense of what she's doing on the fentanyl crisis. And I want to also say a word about Gavin Newsom, who is being of help. But this is a crisis so vast, so big, so pervasive, and so pernicious that unless we really try to work together as a community, not one person coming up with an answer, but a whole community working together, we will simply sink deeper into the abyss. And we have to avoid that at all costs.
Well, that is so well said. In fact, pernicious is a ding word. And I would suggest respectfully, abyss is a ding word. Yes, okay. And at the root of it is a real problem, you know. Thank you, by the way, to another super sticker as we say goodbye to John, and we'll mention his podcast here in a second. Eric Yu says, $20, here you go. Greatest talk show on the planet. You keep me informed. Thank you. Wow. Well, thank you. That's What a nice thing to say, and big shout out.
Big shout out.
Yeah. Thank you very much for that. John, I wonder if you could mention again where people can hear your podcast, which is a daily podcast about politics.
Right. It's entitled Around the Political World with John Rothman. I record it every morning around 7:30, 8 o'clock, so I get the latest headlines. I don't go more than 10 minutes. I think the last two have been about 8.5 minutes. And unfortunately, there's no way to have feedback except through people who send emails. So far, there's no charge. I want to be consistent for Mark Thompson and for myself. But I do want everybody really to support Mark Thompson and his efforts, and Albert and Kim McAllister, because this is an important service. And the fact is that people miss the kind of dynamic we had on talk radio, and we must do everything we can to restore it. It's Around the Political World with John Rothman. You can get it Spotify, Amazon, everywhere you want. And I think that's great. And Mark, I do want to put in a plug again. Make sure you support the Mark Thompson program. And may I say, I'm really honored and will always be consistently available to you, unless I'm traveling somewhere. But
well, you're thank you so much for those lovely comments. We support you as well, and we value your input every week, and you're very generous with your time. So how about it again for John Rothman? Thanks, John.
Thank you. See you next week.
Bye, John Rothman. Bye-bye. See you next week.
The Mark Thompson.
Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.